Call the meeting to order. The President and Board of Trustees, roll call.
Trustee Fay?
Here.
Trustee Lamb?
Here.
Trustee Peck?
Here.
Trustee Rassich?
Here.
Trustee Rippey?
Here.
Trustee Benucci?
Here.
Mayor Collins?
Here, if we could rise to the pledge.
Presidential comments?
I'd just like to make a comment about our Plainfield Fest that happened last week. I just want to really thank our police department, street department, PEMA, community service officers, and that for just an outstanding job. Talked to the chief today, and there was no real incidents over that time period, and that speaks a lot for your department, sir. So, and that's all I have.
Trustees' comments?
I would second the mayor's comments on a very well staffed, planned event, and it takes dozens of volunteers to put that on. And the weather cooperated, the layout was different this year, and it seemed to work very well. Thanks to everyone that helped.
I too would like to make some comments about that. And I want to focus on all the volunteers and the employees. Every time you ask the employees for anything during the entire setup time, and half the time somebody was out there, somebody had their arm and the other person had their leg pulling them in different directions. Our police staff, the fire district, everybody that came out and supported it, and the residents who came out and also helped out, because this money now goes to support the riverfront, and we're trying to develop that further. But it was just a phenomenal event put on by so many people and headed up by the core team with Rob Epley at the helm there and Jeff Domenis, the chair of the foundation. Just wonderful job. So thank you.
I'll join in that. I rarely repeat comments, but I also want to thank Rob Epley and the committee that put that together. Everything went really well, and thank you, Chief. You guys did a great job.
Chief, just to compliment the officers in our departments, they did a wonderful job over the weekend. I did see several situations that they scanned and noticed and proactively extinguished before they were escalated. So they did an amazing job and without incident. Thank you.
I'd like to congratulate the organizers because they've achieved something we've been talking about for quite some time, and that's to make Plainfield a destination for certain events. If you get 12 to 15,000 people there, we've obviously been very successful. As everybody said, it was a very popular event for everybody. Nice, exactly the kind of thing we want. So congratulations to the organizers and the people who supported it. So.
I'd like to comment on another cultural event for the village of Plainfield. Oftentimes, people will say in criticism, there's never anything to do. Well, you can't say that about Plainfield. This could be called Plain Fest if you wanted it to be. But, we have car shows. We had the beautiful Plainfield Fest, which everyone has already discussed, so I'm not going to say another thing about it. But last Thursday night, concert in the park. And I really have to compliment two individuals, a corporation in the village of Plainfield, Aerotech, which is managed and owned by Greg Chapman and Joe Sirigati, provided the band that played Thursday night in the park. It was called Pirates Over 40. They did that Jimmy Buffett music, et cetera, et cetera. You get a couple hundred people out there. It's free entertainment, a beautiful day. You can they have refreshments, et cetera, et cetera. It's another event that is provided without anybody raising the taxes. And I have to thank Aerotech for designing that entire event for us that evening. You know what? I'm going to go on to something that's not so popular and not so, it won't be very popular probably when I'm finished. A particular issue. Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Procedure specifically state you can criticize an action, but you can't criticize a fellow board member. Well, I'm not going to criticize any fellow board members, but I'm going to criticize a particular action that occurred at our last village meeting, our board meeting on July the 7th. We had a consent agenda, and there were 3 items on the consent agenda: the minutes, bills paid, and an ordinance to increase a liquor license for a new tavern called the Sovereign, which is on Main Street. Well, I didn't realize it, and I was an individual. I thought perhaps I fell asleep again because of advanced age, one way or another. But I didn't realize that each of these items was going to be voted on individually. Well, when it came to the pass and when it came to the Sovereign Tap LLC liquor license, what had occurred was 2 people voted against it, 1 recused himself, 2 voted for it, and the mayor voted for the issuance of the liquor license. Oftentimes, I read in the paper the next day that individuals specifically said they had questions regarding perhaps ownership, individuals who were allegedly behind the scenes, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm saying is we have an issue called rumor and opinion versus fact. The fact is very simple in this particular case. The liquor license was issued by our administration and by our mayor and by our village clerk, brought to us to vote on. It was issued under the guidelines that there was no offense by someone behind the scenes. The fact is the fact that that these individuals who attempted to get this liquor license and were granted it did everything that we asked them. They did their testing, they did their due diligence on everything. And so, what I'm asking someone or everyone in the future, and I'm oftentimes guilty of it, if you feel that you want to vote no on something, I think it's relatively important to inform the public why you're voting no, and I think it's relatively important to inform the public why you're voting yes. We're elected not just to represent a particular vote, we are elected to represent people and give a public opinion. I feel very strongly about that. Oftentimes individuals say, certain people talk too much. Well, you know what? We're elected to talk. Represent yourself in the public's eye so people know what you are doing. And like I say, I'm the first to cast a stone oftentimes is the person who's guilty. I, in the past, have voted in a particular fashion and gave no reason for it. But I feel it's very important for us to specifically state our position publicly. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with a lot of Trustee Rash's statements and actually like to make a quick comment as well. There's an amazing thing here called a microphone, and all of us have one. And if we have a question, I think we should ask them and not simply vote no or yes, and then say later, well, I had questions that weren't answered. Let's use the tools that, that we've been given. I did abstain from that vote, and I'd be happy actually to disclose to the board why. A close competitor of the applicant, Hopscotch and Vine, did sponsor a local Republican fundraiser just 2 or 3 weeks, I believe, right before this vote came. And I felt it was inappropriate as a member of that organization to be voting for or against that application at that time. Thank you.
Trustee Peck, may I ask you a question? Did you profit personally from that particular transaction between one liquor establishment and the Plainfield Republican organization? You recused yourself that evening.
I didn't legally have to recuse myself, Trustee Rasich.
That's what I'm saying. You didn't have to. I couldn't figure out why you did.
I chose to. I felt it would be inappropriate and unethical, personally, to actually vote for or against that after an organization I'm closely tied to, an elected committeeman, where I can benefit from money that they raise. I felt I should not vote on that application for that liquor license since that sponsorship was done in such close proximity to the application for the liquor license for a competing organization.
Could you profit personally from that a vote or a recusal?
From campaign committee to campaign committee, that's possible, not in personal bank accounts, no.
Okay, so I can't understand why a recusal would be necessary when you don't profit.
Not legally necessary, Trustee, but ethically I felt it was the right thing to do.
Okay,
I think Trustee Peck actually abstained. He didn't recuse himself.
Excuse me, sir. Is an abstention, Mr. Harvey, similar to a recusal? I mean, what would be the definition of the two? I'm not going to get into a spitting contest, but just for my own information.
They're very similar. I mean, an abstention usually signifies you just don't want to vote for any reason. A recusal tends to imply a little more, but I mean, legally, to mandate a recusal you have to have an economic nexus. But frankly, there's nothing that mandates that an elected official vote on something. If they abstain or recuse just on their own volition for no legal reason, there's no way the rest of the body can force a particular elected official to vote. So that's sort of a summary of it in a nutshell.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Sure.
Sorry.
Can I continue that? Okay. Since I've been on the board, it's about 9 years now. One of the first things I heard is you do not need to explain your vote. You vote, and if you want to explain yourself, you can. If you don't want to explain yourself, you don't have to. It's one of the perks of being an elected official. If we want to vote, we vote, but we don't necessarily have to justify that for anybody. So I still think it's one of the rules. I understand Trustee Ratchik's desire. I'd like to know more about why people vote too, but fact is, unless things have changed, we do not have to explain how we vote.
May I interrupt? I'm not interrupt, but just interject one last point. I feel very strong. I know you don't have to give a particular reason why you vote yes, no, or whatever. But I think we as elected officials stand on a particular position, and I feel it's very important to inform the public when we're in front of the public why we're doing what we're doing. Either have the guts to stand up and say it, or step back one way or another. And I can understand your position, albeit wrong.
Well, let me go one step further. In times in the past, we've had motions, and we've wanted to explain our vote as we went through the process, and we're told you can't do that. No. If you're going to have discussion, you have to be before the vote. Once you're into the vote, you're either voting yes or no, and explanation or justification of your vote is not proper, although we have done it on a couple of occasions, but we generally get reminded that that wasn't the right thing to do. And Mr. Harvey may want to comment on that, but or not, but that's my understanding of the way it's been ruled.
Your understanding is correct.
Okay.
But I still feel very strongly that you should state your position, and it's the last thing I'm going to say.
I would like to comment on the vote as far as the competitor and who received what. First of all, that's in the eyes of the beholder. I don't see that restaurant as a competition because, frankly, the people at Hopscotch and Vine welcome all restaurants. They support all restaurants. Plus, they have 3 other businesses, so it's to their benefit if another restaurant opens. So it's not an unethical decision to vote for or against another competitor's liquor license down there, Trustee Peck, and I find the fact that you bring up the word unethical very interesting in itself. However, having said that, none of us are profiting from it. Very little money was there. We're not up for election. It's just a matter, and you're entitled to your opinion. But I take great exception with the term unethical. I take great exception because there is nothing unethical about it. And frankly, I had a lot of reasons and a lot to go into at this point, but nothing had to do as a benefit to anyone else because I also know other people around town, and if I wait till I don't know someone, I wouldn't be voting for anything, neither would half the people up here. So thank you.
I think everyone's had a position, so let's move on.
May I state one last thing, but not on that particular, no, not on that issue.
If it's very brief, sir.
Yes. During the Plainfield Fest, I went into one of our new restaurants that's in town, the Shrimp Barn, and it looks like an exciting addition to our community. I spoke with the owner, and he said he's really excited about being here. He can't wait till he gets a full menu going, and he said it's just another illustration of wanting to, bring more dining experiences to Plainfield. Oftentimes people say, hey, we don't get anybody good. You hear that a constant or often a criticism of people who say, we never get restaurants into Plainfield. We're bringing 2 or 3 on a full-time basis all the time, and we just got a brand new one coming, and I just wanted to tell you that it sounds pretty exciting, and our future looks relatively bright. And I won't say any more, Mr. Collins.
Thank you.
This would be the time for public comments on items not on the agenda, not to exceed 3 to 5 minutes per topic. Please come to the podium and state your name for the record.
Good, thank you. My name is Darlene Singer, 2821 Blakely Lane, Naperville, Illinois. Yeah, I'm here tonight just to basically introduce myself. What I'm doing currently is I'm on a listening tour in the various communities I hope to serve as being on the ballot for Congress right now. And I've been listening to what you've been saying here tonight, so it's been very interesting to hear. Just a little bit about myself, and this is more for me to introduce myself to everyone, including staff here. I was a councilman in Naperville for 6.5 years before running as a state representative, which I am today. And I'm familiar with a lot of your issues here. I know I was just having a conversation with Trustee Benucci earlier when I walked in, and this is something that's pretty much the same issue in a lot of my communities that I'm running for Congress right now. It has to do with Canadian National and the trains running through the old EJ&E line. Just so you know, I was the Naperville representative when that whole acquisition was going on, and I worked very closely with Mayor Darch and Mayor Weisner to, basically make our communities as whole as we possibly could. So I just wanted to add that comment. Being in Plainfield last week, I was really concerned when I saw the number of tank cars that went through the community and learned firsthand on what impact this had. So this is, again, me just to introduce myself and open it to any questions if you have any. Good. Thank you.
Thanks, darling.
Are there any other public comments?
Hi, everybody. Excuse me. This is Ruben Frontu. I'm Vicky Polito of 25242 Blakely Drive, and I'll try to be fast because I know we've spent some time here. I disagree, and I know they know it, with Trustee Rippey and Trustee Benucci, in part because I do think that it's come out that that vote was based on going with gossip. And I think of all the other problems with that, what you've done is helped cast some kind of aspersion on a new business, probably unintentionally, but that's what that does when you say that that's your reason for voting. And Trustee Peck's comment about feeling it was inappropriate, it wasn't legally required. So I'm going to be expecting that you'll be abstaining from every liquor license vote that comes to downtown, because who wouldn't be a competitor to the host for the PTRO fundraiser on that stretch, by your logic? Also, Trustee Lamb, no offense, but boy, you really stepped in it with the holy smokes, we don't have to explain our vote. Some way or another, oh, you bet you do. I'm sorry, I may not be up here while you're voting, that may be the rules and regulations, but the people do want to know. Trustee Rasich is right about that. I know that sometimes there's a vacuum, as you said by the rules, where you can't. But yeah, people expect to hear why you're doing what you're doing, why you're thinking what you're thinking. And I will say, in Trustee Rippey's case and in Trustee Benucci's case, that as many disagreements as we've often had, and Margie and I have had some tussles, at the very least, they are approachable and will tell you what they think. But I do think it's important to tell people what you think while you're up here, at least a little bit, at least in some way. Mm-hmm. And I do think it was a negative to say something about a restaurant based on rumor that may or may not be true. These guys might not be good players, and it might be a problem down the road. But you had what you had in front of you as matters of fact. You got to go with that and bust their chops later if they break the rules. I think that's the only way you can go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Not, then we'll proceed with the business meeting. We're seeking a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rasich? Yes. Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. We're seeking a motion to approve the consent agenda to include minutes of the board meeting and executive session held on July 7th, bills paid and bills payable reports for July 21st, and ordinance number 3167, decreasing the Class F liquor licenses to 15 and the Class E liquor licenses to 4.
That is my motion.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded to approve items A through C under the consent agenda. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rasich? Yes. Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is row homes at Prairie Creek. We're seeking board consideration of a motion to direct the village attorney to draft an ordinance rezoning the subject property to R4.
So move.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions on this item?
When last reviewed this, the applicant was to come in with some information. Have they provided? I didn't have a chance to follow up this afternoon. Do we have that information that I talked about?
I requested that information from the applicant. I believe they're prepared with a brief presentation at this time if it meets with the mayor's approval.
Maybe the rest of the board could be filled in on what we're going to view,
I'm sorry?
what they're supposed to, you said.
Well, we talked last time, they had a study, engineering study, that said there'd be no downstream damage. This is one of those areas where I think the public has been concerned. We have the engineering's review that said the area that will have the houses will be above the 500-year flood. That's not quite the same thing as the report which they said they had, which said we've done a study that said we're within the 1/10 of a foot requirement to not damage anybody downstream of the river. And they said they had that report. I just wondered if we've seen it, because I asked them to bring that in. Okay. Another thing that we had talked about was improved elevations. I noticed the stipulation has that you will do things to that elevation, but they were not part of our packet, so we're not unable to see what you're proposing to do there. Maybe you want to comment on the status of that and why we haven't got it yet.
Andrew Mao with Ryan Homes, and we have, as far as the elevations, we've, here we go. We have gone through and worked with the trustee, or with, no, excuse me, with Mr. Garrigan, and worked to provide, to meet with the single-family design guidelines. We've gone through there. We've got 16 criteria that we've been able to, go through, and, we've incorporated those different things from windows, complete fenestration, building materials, a simple but classical mix of brick and siding, a mix of dormers and gables, plane breaks to create shadows in the roof lines, overhangs in the front and the back, trim work on all the windows, so 360-degree fenestration, keystones above the garages and the windows and the brick, pediments on the doorways, vents on the cross gables, belt course. We will put that on. It's not shown on the plans that we submitted previously, but we have agreed to put those on. Windows on all the garage doors, and the 360-degree fenestration, and landscaping on all. Every building will have a landscape package along with community-wide landscaping. So I think we've gone through and worked to incorporate criteria from the single-family design guidelines.
Mr. Garrigan's not here. Is he comfortable with what's been said here now?
I believe so. At this point, both staff and the Plan Commission are recommending approval of the project
Okay.
as presented.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Yes, to follow Trustee Rasich's advice, I will speak out on my vote. At this point, I don't support this until we do have that flood study that we were supposed to have prior to this vote, so I'm not going to support this, and I don't want to do it once the voting begins, so.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I have a question in regard to the design package. You have, the information that you gave us for our decision shows 4 different model fronts, and you just move them back and forth. You basically have only 4 model fronts. Is that true?
We have, we've got 12 plans, and we've, and 12 individual unit elevations, and we've worked with staff to put together a few different options on those elevations.
So you still basically have 4 individual units with elevations, but you just move them around differently in a building.
So, yeah, so they break them up different, so they go to different combinations.
So one A, B, C, and D could be B, C, D, A.
I believe there's 5 or 6 elevations that we've combined to.
You have combined different look. So each building will not be identical to another one with simply a variation of a unit different in its
Correct.
location.
Correct.
Okay, because the information we got doesn't show that.
Okay.
That's all. Okay, thank you.
One more question. Last time we did talk about the soil analysis with some idea that it's clay, and this is important to the residents who are afraid that you put this there, it's going to change the runoff. If it's already clay, there's probably not going to be much change to the runoff. Now, do you have any results of that analysis?
I'll let our engineer, Kevin Serafin, discuss that.
Thank you.
We're going to address the floodplain issues as part of our overall presentation. But to answer your question, in some areas there's areas where there's compacted clay, in some areas there's sandy clay. There's very sparse vegetation on the site now. When our development comes in, obviously we're going to put roads and rooftops in there, but we're also going to put dense vegetation, native grasses, and we're expecting the runoff coefficient to actually come down. We've got some calculations in our presentation that we'll talk about later.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Has staff had a chance to review the information you're going to have in this presentation? Or is this something that's new right now to staff and the board?
I'll describe that in our presentation, but all of this floodplain work has been reviewed.
Yes or no, please?
It's been reviewed and approved in 2005, 6, 7, 8, and 9. It's part of the overall. The floodplain work was part of the overall development.
Do you mind if I make a suggestion that you start with your presentation? It seems as though we might have a lot of questions that you would be best off to.
All right. I apologize. Some of this we'll touch on very quickly. I think everybody's familiar with the site. You've seen it a couple times now. Adjacent to Eaton Park and the commercial along Route 59. The property was approved in 2004, and for townhomes and a mix of townhomes and commercial. Significant site work was completed. And there's four key areas that were addressed, or concerns. The floodplain, the zoning, whether the residential was the correct zoning use for this, the land plan that we presented, and then the elevations. And I'll let Mr. Serafin discuss the floodplain.
As Andrew mentioned, the subject site has been previously designed, reviewed, approved, and constructed for a more impervious development than currently proposed. FEMA and all other approval agencies, including the Village of Plainfield, have concurred that there's no significant impact either upstream or downstream of the proposed development. And the proposed grades on this site are substantially above the 100-year flood, the regulatory floodplain, and the 500-year non-regulatory floodplain. Final site development plans for the Prairie Creek development dated January 28, 2006. Accompanying mass earthwork plans were completed in January 2005. And I've brought a set of those along. They've been approved by the village and the village engineer. Included earthwork improvements to fill a portion of the Zone A studied floodplain from the proposed commercial area with requisite compensatory storage so as to have no significant negative impact upstream or downstream. Included in here was also stormwater management facility improvements to provide the required stormwater management volumes for the proposed commercial development along Route 59 and the multifamily residential development as anticipated at that point in time in the rear of the parcel based upon the concept plans. Also included in here were roadway, water main, sanitary, sewer improvements to support the proposed development at the back of the site. Additional stormwater design submittals submitted, reviewed, and approved at that time. There was a stormwater management analysis and report for the Prairie Creek development, highlighting the required stormwater management facilities as anticipated for both the commercial and the residential portions, and a hydraulic analysis and report for the Prairie Creek development, which I have a copy of. Which again, as you could tell, is very voluminous. The village reviewed and approved this in 2005, 2006, and then they approved the as-built condition in 2008. The site construction occurred between 2005 and 2007, including the mass earthwork for the detention and compensatory storage for the floodplain. All the utilities were installed. Joseph Avenue was installed to get to the site, and the Route 59 improvements were partially completed. My firm actually completed engineering surveyed, verified that the site was constructed in substantial conformance to the proposed construction plans. These record drawings were completed and submitted, subsequently reviewed by the village, and for all underground improvements and floodplain modifications, and submitted to FEMA to issue a letter of map revision, which I have right here, which was given to us September 30th in 2008, indicating that all areas of potential development are not encumbered by Zone A regulatory floodplain, and modifications did not have any significant impact less than 0.1 feet, either up or downstream of the proposed development. The letter of map revision, the letter of map revision contains the 100-year floodplain information. We went through a 3-year process to get all that completed between the engineering design, the construction activities, and the letter of map revision approvals. There's various regional agencies that required approval: the Army Corps of Engineers, the IDNR, the Department of Natural Resources, the Historic Preservation Agency. FEMA had to sign off on the letter of map revision, the U.S. Geological Survey, the Illinois State Water Survey, the village engineer, which is Baxter and Woodman, and the village staff, which was Jim Teston at the time, also had to sign off on it. The resultant floodplain is, as it shows mapped here on this, which we've showed numerous times. You know, nothing has changed to the floodplain modifications. As far as our development, our proposed development has less stormwater requirements than the approved engineering plans and what was constructed out there. Based on our calculations, the proposed CN is 70.1 based on the impervious area that we have on the site compared to an anticipated 74.2, which was included in the original stormwater management report and the calculations. Now, it's interesting, the site is currently zoned I-1, and the requirements for I-1 have a maximum floor area ratio of 50%. So if there's 38% buildable, one could construct a building of a floor area of 19 acres, which just the building alone would constitute a CN of 79.5, or substantially higher intensity development than anything that we're proposing. I drew a cross-section indicating across the middle of our site, and you can see it better. On this drawing here, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it shows the relationship between the 2013 storm, which we were asked to explore, the 100-year and the 500-year storms in relation to our finished floor elevations. Now, this was just a generic cross-section taken across the middle of our site.
Real quick, the yellow...
You have to use the microphone.
Sorry.
No, you can use the portable one if you want, sir.
The yellow is the bottom of the yellow is the 2013 storm. The top of the yellow is the 100-year. So the 2013 storm was not even a 100-year storm. And then the top of the red is the 500-year storm.
One other item of concern was the elevation of the bridge. Deck elevation is elevation 612 compared to 6085, which is the 500-year elevation. So we've got 500-year elevation, or even over top. So in summary, the subject site has been previously designed, reviewed, and approved and constructed for a more impervious development than currently proposed, and FEMA and all other approval agencies, including the Village of Plainfield, have concurred that there is no significant less than 0.1 feet impact either upstream or downstream of the proposed development. Furthermore, the proposed grades on the subject site, as well as the existing grades on the bridge over the East Norman Drain, will be substantially above the 100-year floodplain and 500-year floodplain. And the critical floodplain engineering concerns were addressed, designed, constructed, and approved in the 2005 through 2008 approval and construction process.
Now, let me comment on that before we move to the next part. Thank you for bringing in the details. This is the sort of thing that I was looking for last time. Last time we said, well, just trust us, everything is fine. Now you provided the information that says there's some solid basis for that. The thing that you didn't show, which you could have, is the 96 flood, which Mr. Garrigan had in our presentation. This area was dry in the 96 flood, which was much worse than the 2013 flood. So you have even more reason to be comfortable. But at least now we have enough data to talk to residents about that. We've looked at all the important things, and it's in good shape.
And I know a lot of this was addressed last time, so I'll move through it fairly quickly. But the comprehensive plan calls for, it is currently zoned industrial. Comprehensive plan that the village has put together calls for a mixed use, which does incorporate residential to support the adjacent commercial, kind of create a synergy. And, you know, the adjacent properties, having Eaton Park to the north and the commercial to the west, I think that the industrial, everybody we've talked to says the industrial is not synergistic with that. Industrial is not the best use for the site. There's a negative impact on Route 59 with the trucks on the Route 59 commercial, with the trucks coming and going. Eaton Park will be affected more by industrial than by residentials, which is providing residents to use the site. The site's a beautiful site. It is one of the more beautiful sites in Plainfield. It would be a waste to put industrial buildings on this site when you could have residents living there. And the residential supports other uses along Route 59. This is a letter from CBRE, who's the listing broker. They typically want, excuse me. Basically, there's no major, no industrial users are looking at this site right now, at this location. They're trying to stay closer to the highways, and that the commercial would be, industrial would be a detriment to the commercial on the site. And I have copies of those letters I can provide to staff and the trustees if you'd like. In Plainfield's Route 59 corridor plan, it specifically calls for Prairie Creek as another residential multifamily development opportunity. So this was always planned as a residential site. I think we've talked about the land plan in the last meeting. With the narrow strip of land, doing our best to work within that. We've boulevarded the south to create kind of to break up the site. We've got you've got great access to Route 59 or Route 59 and I-55 transportation, the commercial that's along Route 59, and you've got the access to the park and the river trail. That's great selling features, great features for residents. Be able to hop right on those and take advantage, and then you and also working with the Park District to install that trail. At this point, they're looking to complete it and keep it moving forward. And you can see our old plan versus our new plan. Came in with 212 units previously, down to 149, creating full village right-of-way, and no longer having private streets with carriage walks on one side. So it's got sidewalks all the way around, full right-of-way. And I think we've talked about these before. Our density's down just above 5 for a townhome on the net usable area, versus typically that would be 8 to 10. And we've also I kind of talked about the elevations. We've continued to work with staff on elevations to incorporate mixed characteristics from the single-family design guidelines. So again, I thank you for your time. We're here to answer any additional questions. I think in summary, residential is the right use for the site. The floodplain has been studied and taken care of. The FEMA has approved it. The village has approved it. Everything we're doing is well above the floodplain and we've already accomplished the detention for it. It's all in place, ready to go. So thank you for your time, and here to answer any additional questions you have.
Do you want me to address anything, Mayor, regarding the engineering issues? I did speak with Steve Amon at length before I came tonight. He was the one that did the review. He felt very comfortable that the stormwater issues, the detention issues, the flood levels were all within acceptable limits. Now, I have to say, preface that with, we have not seen the final engineering plans yet for the details of the work, but with information that has been provided to date, Steve felt very comfortable that this development is well within the rules and regulations that are outstanding today and should not cause any damage to any downstream, upstream, or residents that may live in the development in the future. Any questions I may answer, I'll try to too.
Well, the question that's come up before, there seems to be some misunderstanding or lack of understanding of what's in the final engineering design. One of the things they referenced is sewer, water, and other infrastructure. Now, what happens between where we are now and the final engineering design? How much are we really missing of that detail?
I think with the information that we have now, a lot of information has been provided, and we are comfortable that with the final the final design can accomplish those goals relatively easily. And that's part of the job that we will have, or staff will have, when the final engineering plans are submitted, that they do address all of these issues too. But we are, at this time, with the information that we have, we feel comfortable that they can easily be addressed.
And experience says that if you're close to being done, the developer usually accommodates things that you pick up need to be done.
Yes, and that's been the case in the past, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Not the
I have a couple of questions of the developer. You have to stand on the microphone, sir. You know, I looked at your basic information. Could you give us just a rough thought? What is your price line will be for this particular? I know it's not established totally. What is your price line for this particular material? In addition to that, would you consider an initiation date for construction and a completion date, otherwise a build out of the entire project?
Sure. We expect home prices to be in the $250 to $260 range in there, maybe even a little higher. All in with their options, they'd be starting in the $220 to $230 range, and then people would add the options, add some granite countertops, that sort of thing, to get us to $250 to $260 range. This is a lifestyle buyer who's buying not because they're looking for the cheapest home they can, but they're looking because this is the way they want to live. They want a young couple who's got other activities to go. They want to spend their weekends at Plainfield Days, or they want to doing other things rather than mowing their lawn. So that's what they choose to do. Or they're, or they could be a move-down buyer whose kids are out of the house, but they're still able, they're still looking for, but still a little younger, but they don't need their big house anymore. As far as when we'd start the project, we've gotten late enough in the year that we'd hope to move dirt this year, finish the undergrounds over the winter and pave next year and start selling next summer. We project it would be about a 3.5 year build out of the project.
Okay. A concern often for the village of Plainfield, in particular the school district, what do you project as a student population to come from there? Assuming you build out at the number of units that you're going to build. I know they're developers, and you have rough guides at how many children come from a typical townhome, et cetera, et cetera.
We go off the village project. The village has their table. Usually you don't get a lot of kids out of the townhomes. You get young children, prior to going to school. Occasionally you get a few kids, but it's usually not. But you may also get a few divorcees, that sort of thing, who will have a few kids. But the school district could probably give that information better than. And we've talked with the school district when we started this process, and they didn't seem to have any concerns.
Thank you.
You brought up one question, which I guess I'd like to clarify. You talked about possibly starting 230, 220, and having options. I just want to make sure the external improvements that we just got you to agree to are not part of the options that are going to reduce the price. You're going to do the outside the way it's been promised.
Yes. Yeah, that's those would be internal granite, upgraded cabinets, that sort of thing, upgraded flooring.
I just want to clarify it, so thank you.
And in fact, some of those options will be additional bump outs that will add additional breakup of rear elevations, that sort of thing.
Great, thank you.
I have a point of clarification with legal. I guess the only dumb question is the one we don't ask. Can we clarify, and you don't have to have the answer tonight, but for a later date, is it appropriate within the guidelines of the Fair Housing Act to be discussing pricing versus materials of a home when it's being proposed? If you don't know the answer tonight, I don't expect you to
Yeah, I mean,
have a
I
database.
can look into that further, but I
Okay.
mean, we're talking about ranges but I will follow up on that.
Okay,
trustee
thank you.
Peck.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Yes, I have one further comment. Oftentimes, or I have stated that why do we vote for a particular issue? And I'm going to give a particular reason why I vote. Currently, that property is zoned I-1. What could possibly go there is, and it's perfectly possible, we could put a warehouse there a la Bolingbrook, a la Romeoville, and it would be acceptable to have nothing but a giant warehouse distribution center. I would not want to see that property go into that particular fashion. I would rather see a development that has some substance that the Village of Plainfield would be proud of. I don't want to see an industrial situation go there, because I think it's a valuable piece of property, one that I think the Village of Plainfield could be proud of. And so I would add that to the mix for consideration when you consider to vote yes or no on these particular issues. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Not. The motion was made and seconded to direct the village attorney to draft an ordinance rezoning the subject property to R4. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich?
Yes.
Trustee Rippey?
Gentlemen, thank you for your clarifications. Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. We're seeking board consideration of a motion to direct the village attorney to draft an ordinance for special use for plan development.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, I'll proceed with the roll. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich?
Yes.
Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. We're seeking board consideration of a motion to approve the site plan for the 149 row homes proposed in the subject site.
That is my motion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions?
I do have one comment, and I'm just going to say this for the sake of talking about it, because we've talked about it. My concern, I love the idea that it's residential. I totally agree that that's absolutely the right thing for this land. I'm really concerned about 149 residences going in and out that same one street. That's probably the biggest hang up for me out of anything we've talked about stuff like that. And so I just want to make that as a point of clarification. That's a lot. I live in a subdivision with 56 homes that come in and out of one, and that's a third of this. I just think that I don't know if there's anything else you can change or do about it, but I just think that's an awful lot to come through that one street. So just making the statement.
Are there any other comments or questions? Not. The motion was made and seconded to approve the site plan for the 149 row homes for the proposed subject site. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich?
Yes.
Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
I'm voting yes. Make it nice, please. Thank you.
Thank you. That motion carries. We're seeking board consideration of a motion to approve the preliminary and final plat for the subject property.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll proceed with the roll. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich? Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is Midwest Brewers Fest license agreement. We're seeking board consideration of a motion to authorize the village president to execute a license agreement with the Midwest Brewers Fest, Inc. to approve hosting the 2014 Midwest Brewers Fest on village-owned property.
So move.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll proceed with the roll. Trustee Fay?
Just a second. John, this is in accordance with what we had the last 2 years about police services.
That's
and-
correct. Yeah,
and
the
all
agreement
that
was drafted
such.
by Attorney Myers, and I think it's substantially, consistent with the first 3 years,
Okay.
or first two, the last 2 years, I should say.
Oh. Yeah, the last two. Thanks.
Are there any other comments or questions? Not, the motion was made and seconded to authorize the execution of a license agreement with Midwest Brewers Fest, Inc. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich? Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
And
Administrator's report?
Before we move on to that, I have no report, but in the case of shameless plugging for this event, because it does a great job for the Riverfront Foundation, and I know it's a separate group, but what is the date of the event?
The Midwest Brewers Fest is Saturday, August 23rd. And we hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Management Services report?
No report.
Engineers report?
No report
Planning
tonight.
Department report?
No report.
Actually, you just have the annual report included if you have any questions.
So, yeah. If there were any questions regarding the annual report for the planning and zoning cases.
Just a quick comment on the report. As usual, the Plan Commission spends a lot of time helping analyze new things and gives important recommendations to us. So, again, the report documents a lot of things that happened in the last year, and we got to thank the Plan Commission for their dedicated effort to support us.
Thank you.
Building Department report?
In your packet, I have the operations report for June. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any guess on the year-end total?
We have some guesses, 200, 225.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Public Works report?
No report.
Police Chief's report?
Thank you. The first item I have on the agenda is seeking board approval to authorize the purchase of necessary lighting and emergency equipment for 2 Ford Interceptor sedans from Fleet Safety in the amount of $12,807.30. We did get competitive pricing from 3 different companies, and Fleet Safety came in at the lowest bid. This amount, I should say, is over $3,000 less than what had been budgeted in the budget. So I am seeking board consideration for approval.
So moved that we approve the purchase of the equipment for $12,260, whatever it is, so.
Second.
12.
Chief, I do have a question. There's quite a disparity there. Is there a reason?
Well, we've done business with Fleet Safety a lot over the years. It's just the pricing they give us. I don't know if they're just familiar with us more than the other companies, but that is the pricing that they gave us.
Yeah, as I've commented many times before, your purchasing policies are excellent. You always research them, you pick the best equipment, and you make sure we get good value. And there's another good example where you saved us money from the budget.
Thank you. And in many instances, we actually try to recycle the equipment, but in this instance, we're switching to 2 different, from one car model to another. And in this instance, the equipment doesn't transfer over, unfortunately.
Okay, good.
Are there any other comments or questions? The motion was made and seconded to authorize the purchase of the necessary lighting and equipment for 2 Ford Interceptor sedans from Fleet Safety Supply, in the total amount of $12,807.30. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich?
Yes.
Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you. The next item I have on the agenda is seeking an amendment to our ordinance related to parking restrictions, specifically 2 issues in the amendments. The first one is related around several schools that we have in the village of Plainfield. We had adopted an amendment to the ordinance, I believe it was last year, where we placed no parking restrictions around several of those schools because we were having parents park in areas that were causing safety concerns when kids were being picked up at the end of the day. Well, unfortunately, several parents have found, for lack of a better term, a loophole in that ordinance where they're actually parking in areas they can park, and they're still instructing their kids to come to these other areas. They see their kids, they drive up there, stop for a moment, pick their kid up, and move away. And again, it's creating a big safety concern. So that's where we're looking for the amendment on that part. On the second part, on Union Street, this is actually bringing our ordinance in line with what we actually have going on. We have a no parking restriction on one side of Union Street that's actually been in effect. The signs have been there for several years, but for whatever reason in the past, that restriction was not part of our ordinance. So we have spoken with several of the residents down in that area, and they're happy with the no parking signs. So we're trying to bring the ordinance up to speed to reflect that. So within this ordinance, I am seeking board's consideration to adopt, not sure what ordinance, but amending the ordinance.
So move.
Second.
I have one comment before we vote. Chief, this is fine here. Can we, if we looked at, with school starting up again, this is coming to mind again, Ottawa Street, like around the park doing a 3-hour thing, or if we're going to look at something like that, because you know that's going to come up again with the students parking along there.
We do have some parking restrictions related to Central High School in that area.
Okay.
The problem we face, though, is as we place more restrictions, or I shouldn't say more, but place additional restrictions on streets, it pushes the problem farther streets away. So we continue to work with all the high schools and all the schools for that matter, specifically Plainfield Central, because we do understand the issues with that area around the high school, yes.
Because they certainly have plenty of parking. I know the students don't want to pay for it, but there's certainly a lot available to them, and maybe that's a conversation with the school board.
That is something we are looking to possibly talk to them about, yes.
Thank you.
Chief, a question on implementation. One thing, I think the ordinance makes good sense and certainly support it, but how are you going to convey to people who have been violating what we want? That's not what you're going to accept anymore. You're going to get more people warnings. You're going to station police out there for a bit.
Well, first and foremost, we'll be working with the individual schools for them to send their letters out to the parents informing of these changes. Initially, when school starts, most likely the first, I would imagine probably the first couple weeks, we'll probably do a warning type thing. And then after that, between the education part and the quasi-enforcement, if you will, with the warnings, at some point, probably 2 weeks in or so, we will transition into strictly enforcement, because at that point, every parent in the school, whatever respective school it is, should have been notified that the parking restrictions are in place for a safety reason. So, and it comes down to parents, unfortunately, don't want to abide by the rules, and they think that their way is better than the safety way that all the members that do traffic safety think they know better. So.
The citation, if you do issue one, is $100?
Parking violation, I believe is $35.
$35, okay.
Yes.
Well, just people ought to know what it is, and so they're not surprised. So more information you can feed them in advance, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, it's totally our intent for education. Hopefully that will take care of the problem, but if it doesn't, then unfortunately we have to go to the enforcement part of it.
Okay, thank you.
I know this won't have an effect on our vote on this particular issue, but it's just a general comment for the Plainfield community. I I really can't understand why people have to drive their children to school every day when the District 202 provides busing and they're a qualified source. I think if someone spit on the ground, you see 200 cars lined up over here dropping children off. To me, I can remember when, well, I know Trustee Lamb, how many tens of miles did you have to walk to school?
Just one, actually.
Just one, actually.
But
okay.
every day, so.
No, but I understand that. But it's just I know it's. I can't believe the entitlement of the current youth. They can't walk 4 blocks. They can't get on a bus. It's provided for you. Do it. I think parents ought to stick up and say, "Hey, get on the bus. It's at the corner. It's not a problem. I don't have to drive you." I know that's not anything you can vote on, but it's my personal opinion, and I think I got a right to say it. Yes, I do. Thank you.
We're seeking board consideration of a motion to adopt ordinance number 3168, amending Chapter 5, Article 6, Section 5-175 relating to parking restrictions.
So move.
Second.
No, we already did that.
That motion's been made and seconded.
Didn't we do that already?
That's what I thought. That's
Before the discussion, I think we did.
That's it too.
Yeah.
Well,
I think I seconded Trustee
well, we-
Panucci.
yeah.
correctly.
we
We'll do
did
it
it.
again.
Keep going.
Just
No,
in
it's
case.
really official.
I think we did.
I thought we did too. so.
official.
Yeah. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich?
Absolutely, yes.
Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Was that 3168?
To vote twice.
Okay. And the last item, or not the last, but the next item I have on the agenda is also seeking an amendment to our current ordinance related to cigarette and tobacco dealers. As with many things with new technology, there's a new issue out there, that being electronic cigarettes. When our tobacco ordinance was first enacted several years ago, or electronic cigarettes did not exist. They are very prevalent now around the community, and we're looking to make an amendment to our ordinance that basically would restrict anyone under 18 years of age from possessing, using, or the sale of electronic cigarettes to minors, or to anyone under 18, I should say. Also, one other caveat with this amendment to the ordinance is we're also updating, requesting an update related to the self-service sales of tobacco products, that being that vendors could not just leave the tobacco products out in the open where anybody could grab them. It would have to stay back behind their control. So, for instance, if someone wants a tobacco product, they would have to go up to the vendor and ask for whatever it is they're seeking. For this ordinance amendment, there is 2 parts to it, but I am seeking board consideration of a motion to amend Chapter 4, Article 5, regulating cigarettes and tobacco dealers.
So move.
Second.
That ordinance number is 3169. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich? Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you.
And
And
the
the
question, you got one more?
sure.
Okay. Well, just a question on, at one time, we had a problem with incense being sold for smoking breaks. We stamped that out finally, totally?
You're talking about the hookah and things
Not
along
the
those
hookah, but
lines?
just little incense that were not for smoking, but people did smoke them because they gave them essentially high like pot.
Oh, that was yes. We do not have an issue with that in our village anymore.
Okay,
Yes.
I know the ordinance or law was passed, got rid of that, but
That's correct.
as a matter of enforcement, I think it's been cleaned out, which is great. So thank
That's
you
correct.
for that.
If no other questions, the last item I have is the operations report for the police department for June of this year. If anyone has any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them.
And a quick comment, good trend. You're down from previous years in terms of total incidents, so.
Yes, absolutely.
The last 3 months at least, I know, have been significantly better than previous years, so that's great.
Hopefully the trend will continue that way.
Hopefully.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Attorney's report.
No report, thank you.
Reminders.
July 25th, there's next movie in Settlers Park. The 28th, we're our next committee of the whole meeting. August 4th, will be our next village board meeting. And August 7th will be our next concert in the park.
We're seeking a motion to adjourn to executive session as permitted under the Open Meetings Act under Section 2C2, collective bargaining, and 2C11, pending litigation not to reconvene.
Second?
That motion's been made and seconded. Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich?
Yes.
Trustee Rippey?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.